All right, everyone, it's morning in America again. That's right, I am bullish on the United States. This is my own personal opinion. I realize that some people have been blackpilled over the last months, especially. This is part of a coordinated campaign. You can't fucking fool me. This is part of an astroturfed campaign to try to get people to think that the United States is like on its last leg. It's barely limping along. I would point out that most of the problems, and the liberals are definitely capitalizing upon this basic issue, most of the problems that we're suffering come from the past administration. Supposedly, unbeknownst to me, Joe Biden was the one that secured a peace deal, for example, in Gaza. And for some reason, prices are rising under Trump. They never rose under Biden either. This is a mythology. It's nothing more than propaganda. Now, most of you already know this. So I'm kind of preaching to the choir for many of you. But there's an inherent tendency for people to get blackpilled when they're avalanched by negative news. This is the opposite, by the way, again, of what happened under the prior administration. Under the Biden administration, what do you get? You get a bunch of new wars. You get diplomatic crises of various kinds, sometimes shooting wars, sometimes, just skirmishes or something like that. Border problems. You have the problem of crime. By the way, crime is falling drastically at the moment. I wonder why the hell that's happening. And other problems. Inflation, for example. Biden inflation was a big thing. Fuel costs and so forth. Supposedly, Donald Trump is supposed to be magically capable of solving all of these problems within a few months. That is not possible. It is not possible for Donald Trump to compensate for the prior administration's malaise in such a short period of time. So what you get right now is propaganda from the legacy media and from, lib shits basically, saying, well, why hasn't Donald Trump solved all problem yet? Why is problem still there? Well, because it takes time, because there are an awful lot of problems which really metastasize, much like Joe Biden's bone cancer is currently metastasizing, which will kill him, by the way. Good riddance. And because you've got 4 years to create an escalating series of problems. You cannot expect the next administration, no matter how good it is, it doesn't goddamn matter if Donald Trump is a friggin' genius. He's doing well, but he can't put the genie back in the bottle that quickly. That's basically it. I'm bullish, though, on the United States. I believe that the United States is barely entering its finest century. We've got our 250th year anniversary coming up fairly soon. We're talking about building like a triumphal arch and stuff like that. Certainly having the World Fair in Iowa. And I would really love to attend that, by the way. It sounds like massive fun. The fact is, though, that the United States was not an empire until, at the very least, you can make an argument for it having built up into an empire with the launch of the Great White Navy in the early 20th century. If this is an indicator, then we've got another 100 years to go before we actually enter our malaise late Republic period. I do not believe that the United States will fail. Look at what we've been through in the course of our existence. Revolutionary War. A bunch of people, initially abandoned by their French allies, by the way, took up arms as partisans and cut the fucking regulars down. They managed to win. Now, it was not necessarily a total victory because, of course, while the British were willing to parley and there were problems with the French, so that's sort of why they came to the table in the first place. Admittedly, the American forces, the militia, which were disrespected generally by the regulars, they raised to the task and they did their thing. War of 1812 comes. What happens? The British are pretty much just about to burn Washington, D.C. to the ground. In fact, they did indeed torch it. And then a hurricane came and put the fires out and scattered their soldiers. Some people take this to have some sort of divine operation behind it. I don't necessarily give it that importance, but it is an intriguing piece of history. They had a microburst, basically. It put out all the fires, and the British, basically, they lost their lines because everything was pitch black, and it's pouring rain, and there's lightning arcing out of the sky. Not necessarily the greatest configuration you can have when you're about to go into battle. Then the Civil War comes. Now Americans are fighting one another. And of course, We have nuance with regards to the Civil War. Of course, Abe Lincoln was not the great emancipator after all, but at the same time, the country held together. Then, later on, with the Spanish-American War, which is never taught in history books, and with the launching of the Great White Navy, that's around the time that we really become what I would argue is an empire. It's a little bit more than 100 years ago. The average empire lasts for 200. I am bullish on the United States. I know where my loyalties lie, unlike about a third of the members of Congress. Theirs lie, it seems, elsewhere from time to time. I wouldn't count us out, my dude. I mean, number one economy in the world, run all the shipping lanes in the world, number one air power in the world. Why are you so black-pilled? Do we have problems? Yes. And here's what we need to acknowledge. This is how you form fundamentally a stable and powerful nation. You need to acknowledge the problems that you have and tackle them. The problem is ripping the bandage off sucks. And so a lot of politicians don't really want to deal with that. They don't want to rip the bandage off. They're like, oh, well, it's only a little wound. Maybe we can last a little bit longer. Maybe it'll be okay. No, you tear that fucking wound off and redress it and stuff like that. That's why Trump is having so many problems with regards to dealing with Congress and with the judiciary, especially, I would say. He wants to rip that wound open, pull the bandage off, redress it, get it nice and tidy, and it's going to be a little bit painful. It's going to take effort. Well, other politicians, they just don't want to put in the effort because they don't really care. So I'm bullish on the United States. I think that with our current leadership, things generally speaking, not obviously in every case, but generally speaking, are going well. I would like to think that this kind of sane leadership can continue for a number of additional terms. It could be Vance, it could be Gabbard, I don't care. I just want somebody to be in charge of the country that actually gives a damn. I think Trump is in a unique position to give a damn because he doesn't have to give a damn about anything else. No, I have billions of dollars in net worth. You can't bribe me. You can't blackmail me. I've pretty much already made my point. And so I think that's probably one of the reasons why his particular administration has been so effective at these things. Again, we've got a story. Just this morning, crime is down in the United States. The number of border crossings is declining drastically. We're making headway in goddamn Israel and Palestine, of all places, diplomatically. A lot of people bet against Donald Trump and didn't think that was even fundamentally possible. Hell, I was a little bit pessimistic. I'm like, okay, well, you tried this once before. You managed to do it in North Korea somehow, which, kudos to you. But Israel and Palestine is a whole different animal. It's a really, really difficult situation because of the long simmering tensions there. They're not just religious, they're also cultural, they're geopolitical, you've got basically every problem you could possibly have within that region. By the way, there was a story today, apparently, one of the repatriated remains from Palestine to Israel is not identifiable as somebody who was actually taken hostage at all. We're still trying to figure out exactly what's happening with that one. I'll try to be on it later. If anyone has any news clippings or anything like that, please do send that to me on Twitter. I'd be very, very appreciative of it. I believe that the United States hasn't even seen its heyday yet. I believe that we're going to rise above it because we already have. Look at the things that we fought. Look at Korea, for example. Korean War, also not studied in textbooks, generally speaking. It's basically, yeah, I went to war with the North Koreans. Bye. Now it's on to Vietnam. Nobody even talks about it. When we went into the Korean War, and most people don't realize this, we were using old, outdated equipment from the 1940s, and we were completely outclassed at first. We had to develop entire new generations of vehicles and logistics and so forth in order to actually maintain combat at all. We were almost driven off of the fucking peninsula. Most people don't know anything about this war. Must suck to be a Korean War veteran, by the way. It's like, yeah, everyone knows my pappy fought in World War II, and my son fought in Vietnam. Nobody remembers me. That's because they were using Sherman tanks actually for a while, and they didn't necessarily work so well against the Soviet tanks that were being imported by the North Koreans. Armor was a big problem at the time, but we got through it. We managed to get through Vietnam, one of the stupidest wars ever. We managed to get through all sorts of hell. Look at what we've been through as a nation. Why are you black-pilled, dude? Everything I believe for the immediate future, certainly within our lifetimes, I believe will be fine. There will be ups and downs. There will be economic shocks. There will be wars and all these other things. Because, I mean, looking at history, you can't possibly expect there not to be these sorts of things on a fairly regular basis. I think that we can get through it, though. I think that together, both as a collective and as a collective of individuals, which is something that commies don't understand, I believe that we're capable of mustering ourselves through it. I believe that the militia will prevail. That's about all. Peace out.